Hello, and welcome to Our Spirited Life, with spirit meaning our vital animating essence and life being our very existence. We're here to engage and inspire you, hopefully, with enlightening, humorous, and sometimes irreverent conversation around real life issues. Our experiences may have gifted some of us a few wrinkles, but we've also gained wisdom, strength, humility, the ability to laugh at that which would probably have made us cry in the past, and the desire to make a big difference to those who still struggle with life's challenges, whatever they are. My guests share how they've created a truly successful and spirited life and their journey to reaching this. Listen to the very end for some top tips and a fabulous music choice. Or maybe one, more than one in this case with David. So, welcome to this week's issue, where I am delighted to introduce David Horne. David is a right-brained creative accountant, which sounds a great deal more interesting than simply being an accountant. He spent the first half of his career with big corporate entities, training as a chartered accountant with PwC, and then holding senior finance roles with AT&T and the BBC. I can't wait to find out what happened next. I'd also like to know the difference between a right-brained accountant and an accountant. David, welcome to Our Spirited Life. We're speaking online. I'm in Cheltenham, so where in the world are you?
I'm in Ealing in London.
Ah, okay. Not too far away then.
Nope, not too far at all.
Excellent. And the wonderful world of digital can bring us together like this and get us all over the world. So let's get going, because I do have a few questions for you and I'm looking forward to our conversation. I love the fact that unlike most men, you believe wholeheartedly in gender equality. I believe there are 3 women who've had a big influence and impact on your life. Would you like to tell us about these?
Sure, absolutely. First up was my mum, who sadly left us last year, but she lived for 94 years and had a very, very good innings. My mum brought me up, so I'm the youngest of 4, and my
Mm-hmm.
mum brought me up in a way that gender equality, she didn't need to speak about it, it just happened. And I remember when I was 7 years old and I said to my mum that I really liked chocolate chip cookies and I wanted more. And she looked at me and she said, "Great, I'll teach you how to bake chocolate chip cookies." And so I learned how to bake. And by the time I was 11 or 12, that had developed into cooking, and I was cooking dinner for the family once a week. And I remember when I was
Brilliant.
15, and I had my first girlfriend, and I said to my mum, "I think I look smarter wearing shirts that have been ironed." And she said, "Yes, you do, David. I'll teach you how to iron shirts." Now, this was in the
Brilliant.
60s, this was in the 60s and the 70s,
Yeah.
when, baking and
Mm.
cooking and ironing were women's jobs. But my mum just,
Mhm.
she was having none of that. And so I grew up in an environment where, yeah, so as I said, I'm the youngest of 4. I have an older sister 4 years, an older brother 8 years, and an older sister 10 years. And there just, yeah, there was no question about, any, inequality between the genders from my mum. So I learned that from a very young age.
Brilliant.
The next one is my wife, Kate, whom I met when we were 17. And we'll be celebrating our 41st wedding anniversary in August of this year. And
Oh,
Kate
wonderful.
is an empath. She has this skill to walk in a room and sense who's feeling well, who's feeling pain, and is drawn towards those who feel pain. And she has taught me so much about compassion and self-awareness. And again, as great as my mum was with the gender equality thing, growing up as the youngest in a family of 4 kids, it was a loud family. So if you wanted to be heard, you had to talk loud. So I was very
Mm.
loud and very brash and all of that, and my self-awareness was really low. And so my
Mm.
wife taught me, as I say, taught me compassion and self-awareness, and made me a much a much nicer human being than I might have been when I was about
Oh,
17 or
that's
18 years
wonderful
old.
because if somebody, connects with you in a way that they just they make you a better person. They bring out the best in you. And I'm sure that works both ways when there is that wonderful connection. Then it
Yeah,
doesn't just make the two of you happier. It enables you to be lovely to be around other people as well.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, it's
So
so
that's
true. It's
two.
so true. And
What about,
that's two. Now the third one, I mean, I have two daughters, so I can't pick one of them. And one of
yeah.
my daughters is expecting our first granddaughter, but she's not born
Oh,
yet, so I can't pick her. Um, so,
oh.
I'm gonna pick my high school German teacher, a lady called Hedda Thatcher, who also is sadly no longer with us. But she was probably the
Mm.
best teacher I ever had in my school years. And so I went to school in Canada, and you know, you start learning French in high school in Canada, in the English speaking part. But when I was in my second year of high school, I had the opportunity to learn another language, and I had had a trip to Europe with my family prior to starting high school, and so I'd been around. Came to the UK, fell in love with London. Um, Traveled to France and Germany and Switzerland and Holland. And I remember when I was learning my French at first, and all my friends were kind of, oh, gotta learn French. And I'm, no, but I've been
Mm.
to Paris, and I've been to, you know, I've been to these places, and I've seen the Eiffel Tower, and it's amazing. And so I was really buzzing with languages. And then when I went in my second year of high school and had the opportunity to pick up another language, and the choice was either Spanish or German. And I'd never been to Spain, but I'd been to Germany. So I thought, okay, I'm going to learn German. And Hedda Thatcher was just one of those teachers that, you know, I think most people, if they think back to their school years, they can think, you know, there was one teacher who really made a difference, and she was the
Mm.
one who really made a difference for me. And what's
Mm.
really interesting, Susie, is she made a difference in a way that neither of us might have predicted. But I can look back on my career, and I can identify 4 or 5 points in my career where I got the job or won the client because I spoke German.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So in a way, the education of life, traveling, as well as, learning another language, if you can, is always going to be an advantage.
Oh, 100%. Traveling broadens the mind in ways that you can't conceive of. And you know,
Yeah.
I know that there are restrictions on, you know, parents taking their kids out of school, and you know, the
Mm.
times have changed. I mean, when I did my first trip to Europe, my parents took me out of school for a month. It happened to be that was when my dad was able to get time off of his work. And so my parents took
Mm.
me out of school, and they went and spoke to the school and said, we're taking him to Europe. This is what we're going to do. He's going to learn all these things. And the school was fine with it. And that happened twice. That happened when
Wow.
I was 12, and it happened
Brilliant.
again when I was 15.
Brilliant. And so you were old enough also to really absorb what you were doing. Your parents sound wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Is your father
They
still
were.
with you?
No,
Yeah.
no, my
Oh,
father died 12 years ago. Yeah,
oh,
yeah. But
okay.
they're both still with me, just
Still, yeah,
not in the
still
physical
very
form.
much there. Yeah. You left the corporate world in 1999 at the height of the dot-com boom, and you say, thank goodness you didn't go into dot-com, but you ventured in the world of entrepreneurial businesses. What happened between
Yeah.
then and the period up to 2010?
So, between 2000 and 2010, I was the chief financial officer of three very different companies that all had one thing in common. One of them was a PR agency. One of them
Mm-hmm.
was a digital media and publishing business that was listed on AIM, the Alternative Investment Market, which is the junior market on the London Stock Exchange. And one of them
Mm-hmm.
was another AIM listed business that was an online auctioneer. So very different companies, but what they all had in common was that they raised capital and bought other companies. And so I became
Right.
a bit of an expert in fundraising and M&A, and turned that into a
Yeah.
business.
Right. Okay. So when you did turn that into business, was launching your own business a bit of a culture shock? And what was
Oh,
it that you did?
completely. Completely. Well, um, I describe this as my midlife crisis. I didn't go out and buy a Porsche or a yacht or anything silly like that. Instead, I decided to try and launch a wine business.
Okay.
Which was tremendous fun. And I've been a fan of wine all my life. Since I was about 12 or 13. And that's really,
Identify with.
and yeah, so I had never worked in the wine trade before. I'd gone to night school to get my wine trade qualifications, but I'd never worked in the industry. So I was learning, every day. I'd never sold anything before. I'd been a finance guy all my life. And I thought, oh, this will be fine. I've got a good connection of people in the city. They make lots of money. Everyone will happily buy wine from me. And they didn't.
So David, okay, they didn't buy it, but did you go into the actual growing? Did you buy a vineyard or did you buy wine that was already
No,
bottled?
I bought wine that was already bottled and I imported it into the UK.
From Canada, or did they make wine in Canada?
No, no. They do make
Too
wine in
cold.
Canada. They actually make
Oh,
some quite good. No, no, no. Well, it is cold, but there are some parts where the summers are very, very hot, and there are
uh-huh.
two main regions in Canada. One just south of Toronto, called the Niagara Bench, and another one in British Columbia on the west coast called the Okanagan.
Okay.
And they make some very good wines there, mainly whites, but increasingly reds. But no, I didn't import any wine from Canada because the production volumes weren't big enough. But I was importing
So
wine from South
you
Africa
went
and from
into
Europe.
it big then. Did
Oh
you
yeah,
you went
I
into
spent
it?
I spent
Okay.
I spent 2 years really trying to do it, and
Okay.
I was able to
So
sell everything I imported, but
right, but when you said nobody bought any, why do you think that was? Was it your approach? Was it the wine? Was it, why did nobody engage in a way that would make that venture successful?
I think it was a combination of a number of factors. I think one of them was that because I'd never sold anything before, I didn't know how to sell, and that was a skill that I've had to develop over the last 10, 12 years.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
But I think one of the other big things was a lot of people kind of, oh, well, I know you, David, you're the CFO of listed companies. Why are you trying to sell me wine? Where's this coming from?
Okay.
It just,
Yeah.
it
You
didn't
didn't
stack
fit.
up.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Okay.
the other thing, of course, was, at this stage, a huge amount of the wine trade was moving online. And,
Mm-hmm.
I would find wines, or I would go to tasting events and identify wines and go out to clients and say, here's this great wine. And I'm selling it for, I don't know, 15 pounds a bottle. And someone will go online and say, oh, well, I found it over here for 13 pounds a bottle. So I'm going to buy it from them, not from
Okay.
you.
Okay. Okay. So, but you did sell it. You didn't have to drink all of it in the end.
I didn't have to drink all of it. I did drink a fair amount of it, but yeah, I did.
Well,
I sold enough.
yeah.
I sold
Yeah.
enough that I covered the cost of the wine. But yeah.
Excellent. Well, excellent. So I would really love to know, what was the inspiration behind and what ignited your passion for helping female founders?
Wow. Yes. Okay. I mean, it's interesting. There's kind of two angles of my life that came together. One of them was what I said about what I learned from my mum about gender
Yes.
equality, and
Yeah.
being with my wife since the age of 17, and we have two daughters who are now in their 30s. So throughout my adult life, there was very much a sense of gender equality.
Mm.
And then the real trigger came in. So I've published a couple of books. My first book is called Add Then
Oh,
Multiply.
I've got them here.
There we are.
Of course.
Wonderful. Yes. There we go. Let's get those up. We need to have a screenshot of both of us holding them up.
Oh, hold on. I've just got to, okay. Now I'll put these in one hand and I will go dink,
Brilliant.
dink, dink, and I will go done.
Fabulous. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So yeah, so I published the first book in the spring of 2019, and as a result of that book coming out, I started getting invited to speak at events, and I was speaking
Mm-hmm.
at an event in Reading about fundraising. And after my talk, a woman came up to me and asked why so little funding went to female founders, and I said to her, I have no idea, but I'll find out. And I started to do some research and, learned about things. I found out about the Alison Rose review that had been published at the beginning of 2019. Alison Rose used to be the chief executive of NatWest Bank and published an
Okay.
incredible study on female entrepreneurship. And about a week after this event in Reading, I had a meeting with the chief executive of the British Business Bank. She and I had met at an event at the Institute of Directors, and this was just a follow-up. And we had a very interesting conversation. And towards the end of our discussion, I asked if she knew anything about this issue of funding to female founders. And she smiled and reached down to the bottom drawer of her desk and pulled out a bound research report called UK VC and Female Founders that had just been
Okay.
published by the British Business Bank like a few weeks previously. And I read it, and what I found out was just incredible. It was, I mean, they looked at, this was a study that was commissioned by the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Philip Hammond, and the British Business Bank engaged a research firm, and they looked at every venture capital deal in the UK in 2017. And they found that all female teams had submitted 5% of the pitch decks and got less than 1% of the money. Mixed gender teams had submitted 10% of the pitch decks and got 5% of the money. And 20% of the decks and 10% of the money, excuse me. And all male teams had submitted 75% of the pitch decks and got more than 80% of the money. And I just thought, wow, this is just wrong.
What year was this, David?
2019.
What year? Okay. Not that long ago.
It was 2019. No, but the fact that this woman had asked me this question, and then literally a week later, I'm with the chief executive of the British Business Bank, and she gives me this report. It was just like, boom, these two angles of so the stuff from my youth and my mom and my wife, and all of a sudden this, and it just kind of collided, and I just thought,
igniting.
This is igniting a passion inside of me. And it really has.
And serendipity. I'm aware that actually less than 2% of national charitable funding goes specifically to women and girls charities, which just
really
is horrifying and shocking.
So the scary thing that...
Go on.
The scary thing is they've been tracking this data back to 2008, and the level of funding to female founders in the UK and Europe has never broken through 2%, and in America, it's never broken through 3%.
There is a long, long way to go. I mean, I'm no bra burner, but we have such a lot of work to do, and that's partly my passion. Please, I've watched your TEDx talk, The Fight for Fairer Funding, which has so far had how many viewers?
3 million.
3 million. Amazing. So tell us a little bit about that. It's an ambition of mine to get up onto that stage at some point when the time is right. How did that feel? And, what was it like standing up there speaking about what really floats your boat?
It was exciting. It's an ambition that I've held for a long time, to have a TEDx talk. It was a bit surreal because it was filmed in the middle of the pandemic. And so in the room, instead of being in a room with a whole audience and all of that, the only audience were the other speakers, plus the crew who were doing the filming. So it was a bit surreal in that regard, but it was also really cool because we were a very close-knit community, and everybody stayed and watched everybody's speech. So that was really nice. And then the talk went live. The talk went live on YouTube in I think it was January of 2021, and it kind of went along, and it was on a few thousand views. And all of a sudden, in the summer of 2022, it got picked up by a few YouTube influencers, and they just started recommending it, and it just went.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So what is it that you do in supporting female entrepreneurs that gives you the biggest thrill?
Well, the thing that will give me the biggest thrill is something that I've not achieved yet, which is I'm trying to launch a fund that will invest in female entrepreneurs. But until we get that away, and we've tried for some time, but market conditions and geopolitical conditions just weren't right for it. But I love to go to events. I love to be invited to events where I might be the only man up on the stage talking.
Mm,
So,
mm,
there's a panel discussion going on. And literally I'm the only one there. I've been at a number of events,
mm,
where,
mm,
literally I'm the only man in the room. And
mm,
I get a
mm,
buzz out of that. I think it's, and then I've felt very welcomed
mm.
in the room because I am an ally. And so many
Yes,
female founders come up to
absolutely.
me and
Yes, absolutely. The true meaning of being a feminist is not someone who dislikes or is against men. Men can be feminists, and clearly you are, which is fantastic. And I
yeah,
think a lot of people don't understand the true meaning. And it's also interesting being an ally. We need allyship, and we need men to be our allies. We need more people like you, not just in the funding and finance, but in everything that we are trying to do just to make life a little bit fairer and obviously more equal
yeah,
for women in so many different areas. When I
yes,
was speaking at the Cheltenham Literature Festival in 2017, no, it must have been 2019, because both my books, Women of Spirit, had been published. It was very exciting in the tent, signing them with the Waterstone sticker on them, signed by the author. And I wanted to have a panel and an open forum with men and women to start saying, let's talk, because these books are all women's stories of triumph over adversity, not all about adversity with men, some with illness or death or building a career. But they said, no, we want it to be women only. And I thought, oh, how backward. But, we
mm,
went along with that. But so here's to you, and here's to people who invite you. More of this is needed. So on your website and in your book, you talk about your model called FACE. Can you explain what
yes.
that's about, please?
So Face is linked to my Add Then Multiply book, which is my consulting business. I run two businesses. I have Add Then Multiply, which is a for-profit consulting business, and then I run Funding Focus, which is the female founders. That's a social enterprise. So Add Then Multiply
Mhm.
was born out of the work that I did in that 10-year period where I was the CFO of those three companies and raised money and bought other companies. And so I developed the
Mhm.
methodology of FACE, which is set out in the book, and that's fund, acquire, consolidate, exit. In layman's
Okay,
terms,
exit.
so
Okay.
fund is about raising money, so getting investors to
Mhm.
support you. Acquire is about buying other
Mm,
companies. Consolidate is about
mm,
putting them together, which is the hardest part because you've got cultural issues and systems and processes. And particularly if you've bought a competitor and the competitors historically have hated each other and now they're under the same ownership, you can have some real
mm.
challenges. And then exit is ultimately
Okay.
selling the company.
Yeah, right. And retiring in the Caribbean or Italy somewhere,
Well, well,
having a life, or actually
some,
maybe giving back.
some, exactly, exactly. And that's what I
Mm,
really encourage people to do is to give back. I,
mm,
you know, I've had clients in the past and they've wanted to make a fortune and then, travel the world on their yacht and in their private jet. And yeah,
mm.
okay, whatever, boring. But I
Well, I was
always
just going to say,
encourage them to give
boring.
back.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah. And
think that I
selfish.
would ever. I want to have some more time off than I have now. And I'm 66 now, and I'm really just starting, but I'm really excited about that. And I know that there will become a time when I can give back, even if it's just my time. Um,
Yeah,
but I do want to have holidays, and that will all come. My biggest thing is to support charities who support women who suffer from abuse, and there's a hell of a lot
yes,
of work to do with that.
yes,
So
yes,
I just put in my notes that even the introduction to funded female founders is riveting. So how have the books helped you shape the work that you do? It is great being an author. It gives you credibility. In a way, it's a very effective business card. But how has it helped you
yes.
shape the work that you do and get it out there?
Yeah, for me, I think, and I agree with you completely on the credibility and the business card, and coming to the end of a meeting and saying, "Well, here's a copy of my book." Oh, I
Mm.
mean, here's my business card. Yeah, whatever. But oh, here's my copy of my, and I always, when I give people
Mm.
my book, I always sign it. But
Yes.
no,
Oh,
for
yeah.
me
Mm.
personally, the biggest thing about writing the books has been the clarity. This is what I do. This is my niche, which means everything
Uh-huh.
else is noise. And it's enabled me
Right.
to really
Okay.
focus and say, okay,
Yeah.
this is my focus. It's set out in my book. And when I had been doing the financial consulting, which I've done since 2012, um,
Mm.
I had a wide range of clients, and by the time the book came out, some of them, I was still with them, but I'd outgrown them, or they were not looking to do the kind of stuff I wanted to do. But I felt kind of a sense of loyalty, and all of a sudden I had the book,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, "Look, this is what I do. You're over here. It's not that there's anything wrong with that, but this is what I do and this is where I'm going. So let me find someone for you who can look after you the way you need it, because
Okay.
I'm moving on to do
Yeah.
this."
Yes. Clarity and
And that was a
focus
real game
are
changer.
essential. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I know that, Eckhart Tolle, just one thing. And I haven't really reached that just one thing. I have a sort of I suppose, income streams. And I have to say, this is what I would love to do for the rest of my life every day. So I
Yep.
just love it. Hearing from people, meeting people like you. I do love that the books contain case studies and stories, which makes the text accessible to people like me. I love stories. In a way, I'm a storyteller and a story sharer, because we love and we learn from stories, because I get a bit phased by sort of tons of technical or preaching text.
Mm,
So what are
yeah.
you most proud of about these books?
Um, Two things. Number
Great.
one is that. So
Yes.
in 2020,
Yes.
my first book won the Business Book Award, as
Yeah.
the best business self-development book. And
Yeah.
that's something that I'll have with me for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
that's not one of those dodgy awards where I pay them money and they say, "Oh, you won an award." That's a proper award
Mm.
where it goes
Mhm.
through a judging process. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm a judge this year at the Business Book Awards. So
Great.
that's really interesting for me now to see the process that they go through, and it's really, I mean,
Mhm.
it's hard. I mean,
Mm.
we've been through the shortlisting process where in our category we had, I don't know, 25 books, and we had a day to shortlist them down, and we came up with a final list of
Yeah.
7. And now I've got 7 books that I'm
Mm.
reading that I've got to judge,
Wow.
and there's a team of
Wow.
judges and all of that. So, really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of that. The other
Yes.
thing I'm very proud
Congratulations.
of, thank you, thank you. The other thing that I'm very proud of is on this dedication page, which it says, "To Kate, Vicky, and Madsy," and that's my wife and our 2 daughters. Quote, "You are the
Yes.
everything." And then a little star.
Yes.
And then down at the bottom, it says star. Copyright REM, Bill Berry, Peter Buck, Mike Mills, and Michael Stipe. All rights reserved. Used with permission of the band. I wrote to the band and I asked for their permission to include
Uh,
that quote in my book. And they came back and they said, not only did they come back and say yes, I actually did it through their band manager. He came back to me within 24 hours I mean, I sent my first email to him on a Saturday evening. I'd had a few glasses of wine and was feeling brave.
yes.
And I sent this to him.
Yes.
And of course, he's in Georgia, so 5 hours behind. So it was late on a Saturday afternoon. And within about half an
Amazing.
hour, he responded me and he said, "This shouldn't be a problem. Let me check with the guys." So he's reaching out to REM, one of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
And there's a hint for you. There's an REM song in coming up at the end. Um, but
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
he said, "Let me check with the guys." So I thought, fine. I went to bed that night. I woke up the following morning to get an email. Now, bear in mind, this was Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening over in America. I woke up on Sunday
Yeah.
morning to get an email that said, "All good. The band are honored by your kindness, good sir."
Oh,
Like, REM are thanking
how
me?
wonderful.
Wow!
Yes.
That was
Well, why
just,
not? Why not? to have somebody, a husband, a father, who writes that and then who means it and dedicates a book, but then actually to have the integrity to ask permission, because not everybody would know that that comes from a song. Of course,
Right.
they're honored. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Um,
Yeah.
oh,
And so
okay, I'm going to
I have
read
the same
this.
quote in my second book.
Yes, yeah, no, that's fantastic. On your website, you say this: entrepreneurs are different from most people. Most successful entrepreneurs have a vision that goes far beyond the product or service they are selling. It's like the Muse has reached inside of you and ignited a spark. That spark glows with the spirit. That spark glows and keeps you driving forward against the odds, sometimes in spite of the odds. Yep. And I've said, yes, I have the spark, the spirit, the passion, and the purpose. So, what would you say to those like me who just now feel that this kind of funding, this module of FACE, is kind of like quite far out there and almost out of reach? No, I mean, it's not, but it seems like it. And we feel that that kind of funding is for those who are already successful in their business. For those of us
Yeah.
really who've been challenged and struggling, and life's got in the way, and da da da. What would you say to those people like me?
Yes, it is hard, but don't give up. Keep focused. Keep moving forward. Gain more
Mm-hmm.
clarity over what it is that you're doing, and if you're seeking funding, what is it that you want the funding for? And then, depending on what you want the funding for, there are different types of funding available. You can borrow money. Obviously, you have to repay that, or you can raise capital through selling shares in a company where the investor doesn't get repaid, but they are expecting the company to grow and one day sell, and then they'll get repaid with a big return on their investment. But there are also different areas. Crowdfunding has really grown a lot, and I've seen donation based crowdfunding. I know of one business that was a bricks and mortar yoga studio in the pandemic, and many similar businesses were forced to shut down. And this group went out onto one of the donation based crowdfunding sites and raised enough money to keep the business alive so that when we came out of the pandemic, they were able to carry on. So you can
Yeah,
look at
brilliant.
donation based crowdfunding. I know one woman who actually crowdfunded the publication of her book. So she said to
Yep.
people, if you donate £10, I'll send you a signed copy of the book. If you
Yes.
donate £100, I'll invite you to the book launch. If you donate £1,000,
Yeah.
I'll find a way to feature you in the book.
Brilliant. Yes. So where there's a will, there's a way, basically, and keep going one step
It,
at a time with the
yeah,
vision firmly in your focus.
and
Yeah.
read this book.
Oh, I've started. Don't you worry. That's going to be. I've got 3 meetings today, but in between the meetings, I'm going to be reading the book. So because I need a
Wonderful.
bit of sort of quiet time. So, David, you have a social enterprise, Funding Focus. How do you manage your time to run your consulting business and a social enterprise at the same time? So please tell us about Funding Focus and also how we can connect with you through this as well.
Sure. Okay, so Funding Focus is my social enterprise that I founded following the discovery of this issue. And our mission is to level the uneven playing field that both
Mm-hmm.
female founders and also male founders who aren't from a white ethnicity face, because the
Yep.
reality is that all the money goes to white men. All of the money is
Mm.
managed by white men, and it all goes to white men. So it's a social enterprise with a very clear mission. And we've been running that for 5 years now. How do I find the time? My wife complains that I do work too much, and my response to her is, "I love what I do. It's not work." So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a big thing, and it's
Yes.
interesting. My
Yes.
dad was similar. My dad finally retired he was forced to retire finally at the age of 83, and he died at 85.
Ah,
So my intention is to keep going, because I love what I do. It's not work.
exactly.
In
Yes,
addition to that, I
yes.
have to say, yeah, I have to say I have an outstanding team. I've got 5 people in my team, 3 ladies and
Mm-hmm.
two guys. And
Mm.
yeah, without them, there's no way I could do what I do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A team. That will be, again, something to start to delegate certain tasks when one can. So my last,
Correct.
my last question is your big why. For what do you want to be remembered?
My big why, for what do I want to be remembered? I want to be remembered as one of the people who helped to level that playing field. I don't have to be the
Yeah.
one. And
Mm,
you mentioned you're 66. I'll be 62 next month. I've
yeah.
discovered in life, as I get older, my ego is less important. This is a big cause. This is a cause that's bigger than anyone. And my view
Mm,
is, there's
mm,
lots of people doing bits and pieces, and one day we've all got to come together, because together we can
mm,
achieve it. And I don't
mm,
need to be remembered as the one who did it, but I'd love to be remembered as
mm.
one of the people who helped make it happen.
Mm, mm. I love that. Thank you. Because I can remember a couple of years ago, International Women's Day, the General Secretary of, oh my God, what was he the General Secretary of?
The UN?
I'll have to put it up. The UN, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Foreign guy. That sounds bad, but he is. Said it will take another 300 years to achieve gender parity. 300 years. But why? Couldn't we do this in 10? If everybody
Yeah.
wanted it, worked towards
Yep.
it, how come
Yep.
it's got to take so long? The woman who was chairman at the time of the World Economic Forum said 120 years. Well, that's a bit better, but why? So we need people
Yeah.
like you and hopefully all of us to work together. And it should never be this is a man, this is a woman. We are human beings, and this is a human story and a human challenge.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm. So I can't thank you enough. I've loved this. I'm absolutely certain that our audience will. But I'm sure the audience is as excited as I am to learn either your 3 top tips or your one main takeaway that you are going to share with us.
3 top tips. Do what you love, because then it isn't work.
Yes. Yes.
Um, be kind to other people, because with a little bit
Yes.
of kindness, a little bit more kindness in the world, we can go a long, long way.
Mm.
And believe in yourself.
Yes. Oh, yes. Mm.
And that can be hard.
I love
That
you.
can be hard. But if you
Yes.
believe in
Yeah.
yourself, and if and for me, having found this purpose, it's a constant. I know where I'm heading. I don't know when I'm
Mm.
going to
Yeah.
get there. I might not get
Yeah.
there, but if I can bring people along who will get there, I'll be just as happy.
Yes.
But I know
Yes.
where I'm
Yes.
heading, and yeah.
Yes. That is so important. And actually, self belief is among all the many things to do with self that I teach during my mental toughness development with people, because
Mm.
it takes you a long, long way. Finally, what's your chosen piece or pieces of music? Because I am allowing you
Yes,
more than one.
you are, and
Especially
I'm
students
ever so
here.
grateful. I'm ever so grateful. So yes. So your brief to me was, what piece of music do you listen to when you need to feel uplifted, empowered, or just plain happy? And I've come up with one for each. So when
Okay.
I want to feel uplifted, when I want to feel uplifted, I listened to a song by Roger Hodgson. Now, Roger Hodgson was one of the main songwriters in the band Supertramp, and he had a solo album that came
Oh,
out in the early 80s. And the song is called Give Me Love, Give Me Life. And it's just the
wonderful.
most joyful, bouncy, happy. One of the lines is "Get me up, get me dancing again." It's
I
just, it's
love
just
that.
it's fabulous. Give Me Love, Give
Yeah,
Me Life by Roger Hodgson, and it'll
I
be on
will look it
Spotify.
up. Yes, I will look it up. And I remember in the early 80s, when I lived in Berlin, I went to see Supertramp in concert and was blown away by the fact that they sounded exactly live how they sounded on their records. They were so great. It's not often you hear
Yep,
that.
yep,
So
absolutely,
the next
absolutely.
one.
Yeah, no, wonderful. So the next one, When I Want to Feel Empowered, this is an REM song from their album Up, and it's called Walk Unafraid. And
Okay,
it's all about, it's the
brilliant.
lyrics are all about just carry on with your path, and don't worry about what other people say. And one of the lines goes, they say I have to walk this narrow path, they claim, and I say no, I'm going to walk unafraid. I'll be clumsy instead. Hold
Mm,
me, love me, or
mm,
leave
mm.
me high. And just, it's
Yes.
just, and that song came to me at a point during my career where I was really, that it came out right at the end of that time where I was working for big companies, and I knew that it wasn't right.
Mhm.
And
Mm,
that song helped
mm,
inspire
mm.
me to move on. And I love it. And
Fantastic.
there's also a really really good cover version of that song by a female singing duo called First Aid Kit. Um, and they
Oh,
do a
they're
lovely, lovely
amazing.
rendition
Yes.
of the song. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So look up First Aid
Okay.
Kit,
Thank
Walk
you.
Unafraid, but
Will
listen to the
do.
REM
Yep.
original, and then
Yep.
Just Plain Happy. Um, so there's an interesting story about this one. When I was 11 years old, and remember I'm the youngest of four. When I was 11 years old, I caught my sister and her boyfriend in flagrante. Our parents were
Okay.
away, and my sister said, "Oh, you can't tell mom and dad." And I'm kind of, "Oh," and she looked at me and she said, "Do you want to get high?" So I'm 11 years old, and I smoke I smoke hash with my sister. I had never smoked anything in my life before. And I get high, and then we're coming back into our parents' house, and this would have been what, 1973. So mom and dad had a stereo in their bedroom at the top of the stairs. So we're coming upstairs, and my sister had put this song on, and I felt like I was walking into a dream. It's my favorite
Ah,
song of all time. It's a piece of progressive rock or prog rock. Um,
yep.
that anyone who was around in the 70s will know, and anyone who's younger than that, think symphony with electronic instruments. It's by a band called Yes, and the song is called Close to the Edge. It's an 18
Yes.
and a half minute, magnificent piece of prog rock, and
Yep.
I probably listen to it at least twice a week.
Amazing. Okay. I
And
haven't
I'm
listened to
seeing,
that
I'm
for
seeing,
decades.
go ahead.
I haven't listened to that for decades, but the name, the band, so I'm going to put that on all of them. Actually, it's just so positive and uplifting, David. The way you tell your stories, the way you share, has been an absolute joy. Absolutely. So thank you. And
Thank
I'm
you.
also very, very thankful and glad that you had such an amazing mother.
Yes, yes, yes. She
So
shaped
thank
my
you so
life.
much to David. Yeah, this has been fascinating, joyful, just lovely. And thank you so much, David. And if you found this episode enjoyable and inspiring, which I must admit you, you surely will, feel free to share it with your friends and family. And if you'd like to be a guest on Our Spirited Life, do get in touch.